New Media Comedy Worldwide Studios. New Media Comedy Worldwide presents Comedy Legacy Series with Jim Mendrinos. And now, your host, Jim Mendrinos.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Comedy Legacy Podcast. I am Jim Mendrinos, your host. And today's episode actually has me a little bit nervous. I will admit, I feel like a school kid that kind of crammed for an exam because I was around all day watching clips and getting my history right because our guest today is a very funny comedian who has been a very funny comedian since before I even knew I wanted to do comedy. I remember first seeing him on shows like Fernwood Tonight and Mork and Mindy and, you know, make me laugh. And even in Don Kirshner's rock concert. And it is a get for us to have him on the show because he is going to be bringing over 40 years of comedy experience to the conversation. And I am so excited. So sit back, enjoy this next hour, and let's see how much we can learn listening to Mr. Bill Kirchenbauer. Okay, so this is going to be a fun one for me because I was a kid sitting at home watching this next performer on shows like Don Kirshner's rock concert and The Tonight Show and Fernwood Tonight. And he was part of how I fell in love with comedy. So when I decided to do this and I reached out to people, I started with the people that I always wanted to talk to. And it is going to be an honor for me to have a conversation with Bill Kirchenbauer. Bill, thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Well, you're welcome. That was a very good intro, by the way.
Oh, well.
It always helps that, people don't give intros enough credit, but an intro is very important. Even if I don't like a son of a bitch, I'll give him a good intro.
Well, you know what? I got to admit, this is fanboy for me. There's some people I've brought on here that I wanted to talk to them because of what they know. And there's some people that I never got to work with you. I literally have never gotten to work with you, and we've been in the same clubs on the same night, on occasion, but
yeah,
I've just never got to work with you. You're one of those people I would like to always meet and go, hey, you're one of the reasons why I started doing this.
Well, thanks. I always like to hear stuff like that. This comedy has changed so much since when I started back in the mid-'70s, about 74.
Mm-hmm.
I can always remember about when I started because I had been doing it for a little while, and I met Charlie Hill. Are you familiar with Charlie Hill?
Oh, yeah. Love Charlie Hill.
Yeah, so I remember I'd known him for about a year or two, and then it turned 1976, which was the bicentennial.
Yeah.
And we tried, me and Vic Dunlop and Bruce Baum tried to encourage him to become the bicentennial Indian and work it out like a gimmick. I said, Charlie, this is your time, man. It only comes once every 100 years. You're going to be a bicentennial Indian. And he didn't want to do it, but I thought, hey, it'd be a big. So that's kind of how I grade kind of when I started, which would probably be about 74.
Wow. I remember the first time I consciously remember seeing you was on Fernwood Tonight, which was a great intro. For those people that didn't know, it was a very much a cult TV show that aired late night, syndicated. We don't have syndication anymore.
No, they don't have syndication, yeah.
Yeah. And then that changed to America Tonight, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And you carried on the role there. You're probably a little bit more famous for Just the 10 of Us and so the other sitcoms that you were the main centerpiece of. But I also remember seeing you do stand-up. And what I loved, and I want to jump right into this, you were part of an era where there was great experimentation on stage. I saw the Evening at the Improv post that you put up the other day, which is a great set, and I had not seen it before. And
I hadn't seen it in years myself. Yeah,
and it's a great thing. And if people have access to Facebook and you go to Bill's page, he posts some great clips, not only of himself, but comedy history as well. But what I saw was you don't just do an impression of a garbage truck at 4 a.m. You became that garbage truck at 4 a.m. The comics from your generation committed to the bits in a way that kind of is not in vogue anymore.
No, I don't see too many physical comedians. So comedy has changed. I just went, a lot of that came out of because at the time I just got done studying mime.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to open up a little mime shop. And no, I just studied mime because I wanted to meet girls. It's a long story. I came out to Hollywood because I followed this girl that I was in love with in Florida, and she won a scholarship to the California Institute of the Arts, and I was going to get a job at the radio station locally in St. Pete, Tampa. And I said to her, if I get the job, I'm going to stay here, and if I don't, I'm going to follow you out to California. And she went out to California, and about 2 weeks later, I got the call, sorry you didn't get the job. And so I kissed my mother goodbye, I hugged my dad, and I got in the car, and I drove to California in about 2 hours because there was sex at the end of the trip.
Yeah.
And I got there, and this girl, in the 2 weeks that she had already found another boyfriend. I knocked on the door and opened the door, and there's some guy sitting on the couch with his shirt off. You know, okay, so now I'm out in California, and I wanted to get another girlfriend because I was used to getting laid. And so I say, and then I saw there was a mime class downtown, and I thought, wow, that's pretty good. I was going to take mime because I had in high school I had won a thespian mime thing. I won mime state champion mime. Okay, so I had this mime thing. So I never took any classes. So I took these classes, and there were a lot of girls in there, and I met some people, and then I started doing improv because Howard Storm, who I had on my podcast just a little bit ago. So, okay, I've totally digressed now. What was the
I was asking about your commitment
you were talking about me becoming, So I had studied this mime so much. So when it came to me deciding to do stand-up, I thought, well, you know, I'm just going to do physical. And so I did, because I'd studied mime, and you become the objects, and you learn all this, you know, stuff, and you commit to. And so I did this impression of a garbage truck, because where I lived, there was a garbage truck that went down the alley about twice a week, and it would make all this. And the guys, and all this stuff. And I thought, well, shit, I'll just do that. And I had to get people's attention. I worked in a jazz club. It was the first time I went up to try to do an act. And I noticed it was like a Monday night talent thing, singers, dancers, comedians. And I noticed people were eating dinner and stuff. So I said, you know, you got to get their attention. You got to get them to look and stop and look over and see what you're doing. And so that was the premise of the beginning of the garbage truck, just getting people's attention, and it worked. I mean, I was bent over and do it, so it would get people's attention, and it became my signature bit that I did. And then I started doing animate object impressions, and the one led to another. And I think at one point I had about 10 or 12 different ones I did.
One of the things I loved watching, and I got to only see you guys act together, was you working with Robin Williams. In the few little bits that you guys did on Mork and Mindy, because you were both so physical, and your character on that show was insane. You know, it was a really over the top, funny character. And
he was a little Tony Roulette-ish.
Yeah,
if Tony, had never gotten married or something. Yeah, at the time disco was popular.
Yeah,
and I don't even remember how I got that part. I just went in there and played, the oblivious idiot guy. And that was a lot of fun because disco was popular, so they made fun of that. And they used to put that sound effect in with my chains chankling every time I'd walk. And I got to kiss Pam Dauber, and that was a great shows. I tell you what most, working with Robin was absolutely, because I knew him. See, when you know people first before they're famous and then become famous, they're still to you the person you met when they weren't. It's hard to change, So I mean, I had known him since he hit town, and. Yeah, I'm sure, he used to watch me. I'd watch him, and I know he liked what I did, and I would go and talk to him in his trailer sometimes. But aside from working with him, if it wasn't enough just to work for Robin, working with Jonathan Winters was I couldn't believe, because my dad was in the Army. I mean, we were stationed in places like Alaska. And way up, I mean, literally at the top of the world, at the fort there, the Army fort, and waiting for Russians to come over the top, and attack us. Where they had radar and shit. And anyway, but I was really on, and my entertainment was to go to the post library, and you could rent records, and I would rent Jonathan Winters and all these old comedians, Shelley Winters, and so. When I got to work with Jonathan Winters, I mean, I couldn't believe it. And then I'd go to lunch with him, too, about 3 or 4 times. I think I went to lunch and just, he just dripped. The man dripped comedy. And he didn't do it for his ego, which was an interesting thing. And ego is a really important thing when you get, I think, famous and talented, and you get a lot of adulation as your ego. And you got to really check yourself, I think. But he had no ego about this. This wasn't look at me, because one time I was sitting in the audience when no one in the audience was there. They were shooting, and they were shooting way down at this end, and he was over at this end where the set was dark. And you've seen sets, you know. And it was nothing. It was nobody was in it. I was the only one in the audience. Everybody else was down there, and he was over here by himself in a dark set, giving orders to a hat post. You know, telling a chair to back up against the wall, and he was doing it. All right, Captain. Let me see you talk. You know, a hat rack. It was a hat rack there. He was standing giving orders to a hat rack, and I said to myself, he's not doing this for his. Nobody's watching. He doesn't even know I'm watching, and he's over here just doing this shit for his own little crazy head. And I thought, how pure.
Yeah.
But he was a trip to work with. That was really fun.
Watching you guys all together, there was a playfulness that you guys brought to it. And there's a playfulness that you've always brought to your act, which I've always loved. It's not by rote. You know what I mean?
No, I've never wanted to be. I have friends of mine that are rote, and you know these kind of people, Jim. I mean, you know, these guys that have the same. Now, I'm not going to tell you I don't never do the same bits, but I never do the same show. I have maybe the first 2 or 3 minutes, but I feel out the audience a little bit, and it tells me where they are. And then I like to play. I like it to be fresh. I mean, I feel like a comedy food chef, you know, and I'm going to make you a fresh hamburger. I'm not going to get the hamburger from over here that's been sitting around. I'm going to get the fresh hamburger. I'm going to make you a comedy prime rib, you know. So I really do cook individually for each, and I do it partly for myself too, because I don't want to get bored. And playfulness is really important when you're a stand-up comedian. The audience likes to watch you play, and they want to know, and you can't be afraid of them. They'll smell that in a minute. And I do like to play up on stage, and people like to watch you have fun. That's part of, I think, stand-up comedy, is showing that you are having fun. I think that's why all those little things like the old Red Skelton and stuff, when they would break character and laugh, the Bob Hope bits, and they would laugh at each other, and you know, it's the honesty of the moment. I do. I never am rote. I never do the same show.
Where that always showed the most to me was when I would see you. I don't think anybody who's my audience knows this show, but there was a show called Make Me Laugh that you were a guest on quite frequently.
Right. And
you would break everybody. I mean, it was just fun because it was always unexpected. Now, what's the story behind that? How do you prep for something like that?
Well, it's interesting. See, I never wanted them to laugh. I know the purpose of the show was to get people to laugh, but I hated it when they laughed because it would usually interrupt the bit, and I wouldn't get to the punchline thing. But, you know, I would only write stuff, and we'll talk about the theory of writing.
Yeah.
I would only write stuff that were meant to last for a minute. So, I mean, I can bullshit, you know, about a pencil for a minute. And I would go out there, and the person happened to look weird, or I could make fun of them or something, then I would go for that too. That was the second incarnation of that show. The first one was back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, there might be some stuff on YouTube from that. But then they did it later on after the Bobby Van version, and they really kind of screwed it up. They put the audience behind the comedian.
Mm.
They rearranged it. Whereas a typical, you know, audience looking down on a game show, this was, a lot of the audience was back behind where you were watching the comedian and the contestant. So the comedians didn't have the audience to play to like we did. You couldn't touch the people. But how to write? Well, first, here's the bad thing. If there were a show was like 3 contestants, but every show they'd always bring in another one, or some sort of a ringer in case one of the other ones screwed up. So they'd still have 3. So every show you'd have to do one bit that they would automatically throw away. So that's 5 bits for the 5 nights, for a week. So you actually, at the end of the week, had 5 good minutes that probably wasn't going to get used. So, but it was the good thing about Make Me Laugh, as opposed to say a Tonight Show even, was a Tonight Show, you know, hey, you're on Tuesday night, thank you very much, good night. That was great, I saw you last night, and then boom. But with a show like Make Me Laugh, it was Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Right, and so you're really beating yourself over the head. Most people they're gonna see at least maybe one or two nights. Because back then, like you said, it was syndication, and so somebody would see you. So it was the repetition, I think, that I really liked. There were a lot of great people on there. Jay Leno wouldn't do it because a lot of people, but there's a few people that just wouldn't do it. But I just was just an excuse to do jokes.
What now? I remember this vividly, but I cannot find it on YouTube. And if you can't find it on YouTube, it may not be true. So I just wanted to go right to the source. I vividly remember that you were with a contestant and you literally walked up, made a face, and he busted out laughing immediately. And then the rest of the time was just you commenting on that he wasn't even trying.
Really? I don't remember that. Yeah, I did so many of those. I think I did about, I'm gonna say about 6 weeks. So if you think about that, that's 5 times 5 times 6, that's what, to 30, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot of shows.
Yeah, it's a lot of shows. So yeah, I kind of forgot. Possibly. There were lots of great, I'll tell you the biggest story that ever happened to make me laugh was with Demond Wilson. It was me, Kip Adada, and Murray Langston were on the show.
Unknown comic for people that don't know.
Yeah, and Demond, who was on Sanford and Son, was not known to be the most amicable guy. Is that a word? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a little cranky. Let's put it that way. And so he was on there, and who went out and messed? It was Kip. Went out first with holding a pie that he had made from either whipped cream or shaving cream. And he walks out there, and Demond's dressed to the nines. He's got a nice outfit on, and he looks at Kip like, what the fuck are you doing with this pie? And Kip's doing it, and what the thing was, Kip hit himself in the face with the pie at the end. But he got shit all over Demond and pissed him off. Oh man, was he pissed. And then Kip leaves. Then Murray goes out there wearing a monkey mask, okay? And grabs Demond by the face and gives him a big French kiss right on the lips. Boy, was Demond pissed off after that. Oh my God, Murray did some stuff, and Demond just gave this guy Murray I wanted to kill him, and then I'm not trying to do any harm to the guy. I'm just hi, how you doing? And he started flipping whipped cream or shaving cream at me, and I just kind of get through, and that was like When he got done, okay, let's go to the commercial. Demond jumped up and said, I'm gonna kill that motherfucker, pointing at Murray in particular. And the other, and Kip too, I think.
Yeah.
And, we went back to our rooms and we heard that he actually went out to his car to get a gun to come back and kill Murray. but they called the police and the police, the studio cops came and got him and took him off the thing. And that was crazy. That was crazy.
Now,
it was fun time.
It sounds like a fun time. And you're mentioning a whole lot of comics that are like my pantheon, the guys I grew up watching, people like Kip Adada, yourself, Murray Langston, the unknown comic for people who
Gary Shandling did some of them. Bruce Baum, Vic Dunlop, lots of comedians did them.
Now, most of those guys took time and archived their stuff. They released albums or they released videos. I can't find them for you. Was that a conscious choice?
Choice, no, but back then, gotta remember, you could put out a record. You could do I did some Showtime specials, HBO specials. I never had my own special, which I still like to do one day. But I was just so physical that it was kind of hard to just put something on sound, It just wasn't, it just didn't do it. So I never really bothered. I had to always feel like I had to be seen.
Okay. Now you also got a ton of work as an actor. And it's great watching you act, but when you would go and do the late night shows, it almost seemed like they wanted to focus more on that than your stand-up, and when you were on those late night shows, did you feel a pull between the acting side of you and the stand-up side of you? Because as a stand-up, if you're on the Tonight Show with Carson, that's all you wanted your whole life, probably.
That's right. Yeah, that's all you needed.
Yeah.
Well, I did. Not all stand-up comedians can act.
No.
Not all actors can do. Very few actors can do stand-up, even the greatest ones. I've never seen an actor
Yeah.
pull off stand-up very well. And a lot of people confuse comedic actors with comedians.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's two different things. And broadcasters are two different things. And it's just two different. But comedic actors are actors who are usually act funny. But comedians are people that go out on stage and pull their pants down and go, "Here, this is me," and they do a show. That's a whole different thing,
Yeah.
whole different thing. And I used to do broadcast. Have you ever watched De Niro on Saturday Night Live? One of the greatest actors of we've ever seen, and he had a hard time with those fucking cue cards because it's not his skill set.
No.
They don't have cue cards on movies. He goes and memorizes those lines and gets into them. And he comes out and he does what he does. And to give them cue cards, it doesn't work at all. And so. And then I always like to watch actors like the Academy Awards try to read the cue cards. Great actors. And I am here tonight to give the award to the person. I go, geez, really?
All right. I want to talk about your process because when we had our little pre-interview, you said this was going to be a very short conversation about process. So what is your process for writing?
Well, the word writing is a problem word with me right away.
Okay.
To me, it's writing it down.
Okay.
I have never sat down, and I know guys that work this, and everybody has their own different weird stuff of doing it. I know guys that say, "All right, I'm going to write some bits," and they get at the computer and I have never done that. What I do is I just think of shit, is what it is. Things hit me, and then if I'm lucky, I'll go and write it down, and then I'll think about it, and then sometimes other stuff I'll put it away. And luckily, hopefully, when I write it down, the next time I see it, I understand what the hell it meant. But I just kind of keep track of stuff, and as I watched my career, I've watched bits grow, and I play on stage. I find stuff on stage, little Easter eggs during my act, and I go, "Oh yeah, I have this cow bit that I looked at way years ago about leather and cows and getting them in Texas. And, cows aren't hard to catch. I mean, they're just in that little fenced in white yard there. Moo, bang, you're a belt, and this whole thing kind of grew into like a 5-minute bit. And I watched that in different sequences of me doing it and go, well, there's a little bit that started, it grew and it grew and it grew because I would do it and find stuff along the way. If I can write things down, I have a book that I've written 2 or 3 words things down, and I know what that means. But if somebody found that, they go, "What are these? The writings of a madman? This doesn't even make sense." But
it is the writings of a madman, but that's what makes it funny.
Yeah, Richard Lewis is funny. Richard used to get so damn nervous about going out. We used to do Budweiser tours together, and he used to get so nervous about the angst, and he would run around. And I remember seeing him backstage, and he was walking back and forth and pacing and looking at this toilet paper. And I went over to him and go, "What's the matter, Richard?" He goes, I said, "God," I said, this is, why are you so nervous? I mean, this is terrible to watch you go through this angst. It's like squeezing out a turd, And then I said, "What's with the toilet paper?" He goes, "What toilet paper?" And I look it's a piece of paper, like a legal size piece of paper that he has so crunched up and folded and molded and bent and crushed and moved and unbent and stuff that it looked like toilet paper. And he had stuff on there that, like me, if you look at it, you go, potatoes, carousel, Budweiser beer. Oh, okay, I don't know what that means. But to me, I know that bit. So he would go, so different people have different ways of doing it. That's how I do it. I think of shit, and then I think of it again, and then I write it down, and then next time I go up on stage, I'll try it out. Now, I've had lots of bits that I've done that I think are funny, and then I don't, you try to build on them, and they never do. I had this one joke I tried for years and years. And I really kind of went like this. You go, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was actually late, and I got in a car accident. I T-boned a Winnebago, and I not only got arrested for running a stop sign, but for breaking and entering." I thought that was funny. You know,
is.
I thought it was funny. I didn't do it quite the right pace, but those were the words. And to this day, I think it's funny. And but you know, sometimes you'll try and people go, and I don't know. My process is being up on stage and doing kind of what I think of, and sometimes I surprise myself. I really do. It's like magic. I go, oh, that was great. Where'd you come up with that? I had no idea.
Well, now this is I've only been in the audience one time when you've done a longer set. I believe it was at the Bottom Line in New York City, if I'm remembering correctly. That's going way back a lot of years. You're so meticulous with your physicality that it seems perfectly choreographed and written into the jokes, and yet you're saying there's no choreographing, no writing. That's just instinct.
Yeah, yeah. And all my physicalness comes from mime.
Wow.
I mean, I don't call it that because people hate mimes, but you know, that's what I'm all my physicalness. You know, I was good on these pantomime game shows and stuff like that. The physical, you know, and improv. I studied improv with Howard Storm, who used to be on the committee, and he was and directed most of the Mork and Mindy's, and I learned a lot from him. And true improv is an interesting thing to learn because it teaches you to think on your feet. And if you learn real improv, you learn what they call space work. I'm sure you're familiar with this.
Oh yeah.
People don't know what it is. It's acting out maybe some glasses or holding a pen or walking out of a door, but not doing the door like, you know, this, but actually doing it so when the audience sees it, they see a door. So if you're really good at space work, you can create a door, you can create a window, you can create a tea set, you can create all sorts of stuff, and thereby building a set for yourself, an invisible set that the audience sees in their mind because you've established it. And so when that comes to like auditioning, you can use that there, but it helps with my act because I can not only do the verbal, but I can help it. If I can help it along with some physicality, I can do that too. I've always told people, you know, I go to these radio interviews, they go, well, describe your comedy. And I go, hey, you know, I'm like a buffet. I'm like a buffet of comedy. I got props, you know, but I'm not a prop comic. I've got some props, but I'm not by any means, you know, Carrot Top or Gallagher. I do some ranting. I do some impressions. I do some jokes. I do some sound effects. So I got like a little comedy buffet going on. I've never really classified. My theory is stay interesting. Keep the audience interested. And if I can do that with physicality and verbal and noises, then that's what I do.
Now, I also want to talk to you because you are bringing in so many tools within your stand-up, whereas so many stand-ups are like, no, stand-up is just words and you got to do it with but you're not afraid to bring in all those other things. But here's the beauty of it. You don't rush. You take your time.
I used to go 100 miles an hour.
Did you?
Yes. And I just, because I would go boom, 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 boom. Everything was non sequiturs. And as I got older, I think in my 40s, I learned to relax. I said, you know, faster is not always better. And I've told other comedians that I said, slow down, savor. It's like a meal. Savor the food. Don't gobble it down. But when I was younger, I used to go really fast. I mean, it was just, and what you do is you really tire out the audience. And I had a big time manager describe to me once, I forget what his name is. But he, Steve Martin, he managed Steve Martin and some other, anyway, he described me as shows. He said, most performers have shows like a graph where it'll start high and then it'll come down and it'll go high up in the middle and then come down. And he said, most performers have some sort of interesting pattern instead of, you know, zoop, zoop, or zoop, zoom, zoom. You know, he said, you got to give the audience ups and downs. He says, especially if you're beating them hard, you got to give them time to breathe.
Now, this is interesting for me because when you watch your Tonight Show appearances, the Letterman appearance is another good one. You are so calm. You're so collected. And that would have been in your 30s, which is right at the time you're telling me that you rushed. What was different about performing on TV that made you have to slow down?
Well, for one thing, in a club, you just go. Just go until I feel the audience has had it. In fact, I leave before I'm a firm believer in always leave them wanting more. I really am. I'd always leave them go, oh, he left. I don't okay, what time is it? I hope we don't overcharge the babysitter. So I always believe, but I in a club, you can go until you're done. Well, I've been here an hour, I'm going to leave. But with a Tonight Show or a talk show, you have to be very specific. They give you 6 minutes. Or 5 minutes, and so you have to be very specific. If you just let me go, and then I'll just go until I can't go anymore. But in that 6 minutes, you have to be very true. You got 6 minutes, so I would use a cue card actually with 1 or 2 names, just because I plan that bit. You have to be very specific with a Tonight Show shot. They only give you those minutes. You ain't got time to bullshit, and you can't forget them. I'll forget what to do in 5 minutes. In an hour, I just think of everything, and now I'm done. Thank you very much. So, a lot of comedians had problems going onto television because they were here's a simple little thing. We're so used to using the microphone, doing comedy with the microphone up to their face. And then they get to the Tonight Show and they go, where's the handheld microphone? Oh, there is none. Oh God, what do I do with my hands? I don't, maybe I'll just do this, because they're going to use the boom. I used to sometimes, because I'd use sound effects, I'd have them give me both, where I had to listen when I grabbed the mic, make it live. But a lot of comedians, I saw them, they didn't know how to handle, because they never planned for that. They never thought, one day I'll get on a talk show and they're going to use a boom. We don't have booms in comedy clubs, so that would throw them off. Well, so you got to learn to work free-handed.
Well, I also I do want to talk about that too, because with as much physicality as you do, and you do sound effects, and having all those things there, did you find it harder to get on television because you weren't the standard fare?
Yeah. I think some people were, considered me a one-trick pony in that I did my garbage truck impression or my other stuff. And I will tell you, I've seen comedians on TV that I thought, they're all right, aren't they? And then I saw them live and I went, wow, what a difference. So, you have to understand that seeing somebody live and seeing somebody on television, seeing them live should always be much better. And I can tell you a lot of comedians, like I said, I weren't that crazy about what I saw on TV, but then when I'd go in a club and see him, I go, oh, that's pretty damn funny. Or
now I know that you love comedy, and this is great, because when we had our preliminary conversation, just the amount of how much you love the art form just coming
Well,
through.
I do. It's a historical thing. It's an American performing form of art. It was kind of invented here. I mean, we've always had the long ties and the squirting water and the pie in the face and vaudeville from England, and then over here in vaudeville and just all the slapsticky stuff. But it's an American art form that started here, about when a guy gets up on stage and was, we were talking the other day. I was trying to remember that guy's name, the first stand-up comedian ever, Frank Fay.
Okay.
Yeah, he was considered to be, because he wasn't broad, he wasn't slipping and falling and have a big nose he just came out and goes, hi, how you doing? That's a whole other thing. That's a whole nother thing. That's a whole other personalized the comedy. That I haven't got makeup on as I'm not a clown. I'm going to tell you with words what I think of life. And it's a big art form. I travel to Asia sometimes, and they're just discovering it. A lot of these countries, they come from very broad stuff. Even like in Mexico and stuff. Over the last 10 years, they've gotten stand-up comedy and stuff. It used to be very broad stuff, and now it's getting more personalized. So yeah, I think it's a big history. It's a wonderful history mixed with media too. When you go from radio, radio was a whole dimension. It was its own chapter of comedy, and then television, and then movies before radio, and now even Netflix now is a source of new comedy, but I think there's a lot of it, and I don't know. It's changed a lot. I watch comedians. I don't want to turn into Steve Allen. These young comedians, they don't know how to, I don't want to do that. But I watch a lot of, and I want to laugh, but sometimes I find, I don't know if it's just too politically correct stuff or you can't, I don't know. I watch some people, I just sit there and shake my head and I don't know what the jokes are. And I don't mean everybody's got to have, two guys going to a bar and that one, I tell you, I understand the need for reality or what I mean, but some of the stuff I just think, wow, this is what a clever next door neighbor would say to me over the fence. That's about it.
Yeah.
There's some people I like. I mean, I love to laugh. I love some, but if someone's thinking about being a stand-up comedian, you really, I have people ask me, well, can you give me any advice? And I go, just find yourself. Find you. Don't find somebody else. Don't be somebody else. Don't sound like somebody else. Find you. Find your style. Be your own Cher, if you will, so that if someone is going down the road and they're listening to radio, it's like Cher. You hear that voice, you don't go, who is that? It's Cher. Find your own style. And I don't see a lot of that anymore. I love Brian Reagan. I think he's fucking hilarious.
Yep. Now, when you watch stand-up now, are you still able to enjoy it when someone comes on that, like a Brian Regan that you see? Or is it automatically looking in, for me, I'll cop to it for myself, I'm deconstructing before I'm watching. I'm like...
Yeah, it's hard not to. It's hard not to. But I watch. I mean, I laugh my ass off of Brian Reagan. I think he's just... hilarious. I mean, I think Jim Gaffigan is very, very funny. I think a lot of guys, these comedians, they watch people like Jim Gaffigan and they think, well, I'll just get up there and talk about it. I went to the store. What a stupid hat she had on. They think he makes it look easy. And these people are mistaken. They watch him do it and it looks so easy. They think, well, I can do that. And they don't understand that that's, neatly written, highly trimmed, very rehearsed, specific material that's been worked on. And a lot of people just don't have the effort or talent to work on material and create that kind of funny. But it looks so easy for him. And it fools people. They think, I can do that. No.
There's very few people that can do what a talented stand-up does. It's you're writing, you're directing, you're editing, you're choreographing, you're
your own director, producer. And I see a lot of people that don't speak all that well. And I think, and I don't mean you have to speak, the King's English or something, but I just think, if you're gonna have a job where your job is to speak, then you should speak pretty well. I get very irritated by like, I'm like, it's like, we're like, it's literally like, and it just drives me. Anything you do redundantly all the time is going to be annoying and distracting. And I think if people are going to learn, I watch some people and I say, did they ever watch this? Objectively watch this and see how they're annoying.
Let me also ask you that, because I don't think comics value that enough. Did you watch yourself when you performed? Did you watch the Tonight Show sets? Did you watch? Of course
I did. Yeah, and I'm my own worst critic. But you can't do much about it. No. I can just I watch. I think it's important to watch yourself, but some people can't watch themselves objectively. And if they do have people that watch them, it's nice to get a good critique from somebody who knows what they're talking about. But I'm sure Gaffigan listens to himself all the time and changing and editing. And it's not just the word; it's watching you. How is your body language? How are you interesting to look at? Harry Anderson told me once. He said you can tell how funny a comedian is by if you turned off the sound on them and watch them, will they still make you laugh? And I said, oh, that's interesting. So we tried it for a few times. And it's kind of true.
Yeah. One of the best weeks of my life was working with Harry Anderson.
Oh, what a unique guy.
And sweet, like nobody would believe.
No, a very true. He was a good friend of mine. I was very upset to lost him. But I knew Harry for a while, and he's just a unique individual. There'll never be another Harry Anderson. It's just, that was a one of a kind. And I have so many friends that I know that are just diamonds diamonds of humans that you just go, wow. My friend Gary Muldeer. I've known Gary Muldeer since the 70s. And he's so funny, and he's such a great guy. And but I enjoy talking to them, off stage, aside from the stage shit, just them being them, just really, really funny people. And you've met lots of gems of people go, wow, aren't I lucky to have contacted with this person?
Yeah, I mean, so I want to talk about that because people look at stand-ups like, oh, you're alone all the time, it's a sociopathic kind of industry, you're by yourself all the time. They don't realize that our peer group, the people we start out with, becomes somewhat of a de facto family and become people that we lean on. And you were mentioning Gary Muldeer, and you mentioned a lot of the other guys you came up with. What was it like in the beginning when you guys were all coming up together? Did you guys write together? Did you guys work together?
Writing, no. I would, everybody give everybody suggestions. The thing is, everybody knew everybody, and everybody knew everybody's act. And if you did something from somebody else's act, everybody in the room knew it. I mean, when I hit the Comedy Store in like 76, something like that, 75, 76, there weren't that many comedians. I mean, there were guys that there were maybe 100 comedians, and that's counting some of the obscure ones that, were kind of never really got anywhere, didn't get a lot of times. But, back then it was Freddie Prinze and Gabe Kaplan and Jimmy Walker. And Jimmy Walker, when I hit town, he was the guy. He was the man, because he had his show as a #1 hit. He was driving a yellow Mercedes convertible. He was always coming to the club with girls, and he would get up and people would scream and laugh. And he put on a great. It was amazing time in retrospect. When I look back on it and read the books that have been written about it, they call it the golden age of stand-up comedy. And I have to say, with the people that came out of there, Seinfeld and Gary Shandling and Gallagher, and I could sit here and go on for a long, long time about all the great comedians and characters. They were, they were characters. I don't know. It was, when we hang out in the back of the Comedy Store and smoke pot and tell jokes and laugh our asses off. I never hung out much at the club. I wasn't a big schmoozer. I'd go there and see my buddies and stuff. Maybe we'd go someplace and eat or go play someplace and smoke. But I never hung out like up at the Comedy Store, that house they had up behind the hill. I never was in need for that. I was never a Comedy Store orphan, so to speak. I had a job. I sold videotape equipment. And when I was 21 years old, and I looked like I was 36, so I was selling all these, and they thought it was I made pretty good money, but if they'd known how old I was, I wouldn't have. But I made money. I had my own place. I bought my own house when I was 27. I didn't need the help from the Comedy Store. I mean, I worked there. I entertained, and I had a great time. I have great memories of also Tim Thomerson. And all these great, even some of the obscure people. My friend and I, Bruce Baum, we play a game called Name That Obscure Comedian. And we come up with some names and go, oh, yeah, I remember him. Yeah. Ed Bluestone. Oh, yeah. What about, all these things with Larry Beezer. Oh, yeah, Larry. So anyway, it's fun. People ask me, how has it changed? How has stand-up comedy changed? And I'd have to say, it really hasn't, in that there's still maybe more people that want to do it, but the amount of people that actually are capable and able to make a career out of it and make money and get a lasting career is still about the same ratio, few and far between.
This is awesome. I don't even have to do any work. I just ask one question and you're off.
I'm a talker. That's what I do for a living. I told you that, right?
This is one of the best interviews I've ever had. This is perfect for me.
I like talking about comedy. I'm not a big football guy. I played golf. I don't, basketball. But I'll sit around and talk about comedy with comedians and stuff.
Yeah.
Like guys sit around and talk about baseball. I find it interesting.
Now, you were mentioning the guys that you're mentioning, that you're saying are the obscure ones or the ones that you started with, those are the guys that inspired me to want to do it. In my generation, in '83, I came up with the Adam Sandlers and Chris Rocks and
Right.
Colin Quinns. That's my peer group
Right.
going forward. And I look back at your guys, and in particular for me, it was Freddie Prinze. When he talked about having an immigrant dad. I had an immigrant dad. He talked about, living in a tenement in New York City. I lived in a tenement in New York City. He talked about having a crazy super. I had a crazy super. So little 9-year-old me was like, Dad, I want to do that.
Now that's the personalization of comedy.
Yeah.
Becoming, here's me and my life and how people, my sitcom, when I played this guy with all these kids, I had people go, my family, we had kids just like that. Your sitcom family was just like it. Well, that was amazing. So everybody identifies. I don't know. It's like I think I told you the other night. My nostalgia was, Leave It to Beaver and Mayberry and Dennis the Menace and all the 50s and 60s. My favorite Martian and stuff. That was my nostalgia. And I have a hard time sometimes understand, or I get surprised at trying to realize that I and my show and a lot of stuff I've done is other people's nostalgia. Yeah. It was just my life, but it was there because you never know. It's amazing. You get on TV and touch so many people. I still have people come up to me and say, "I saw you in a comedy club in Cleveland in 1979, and you were so funny." And I'm flattered that people can remember some show I did back in 1980. Oh, you did this and you did that, and I go, oh yeah, I remember that. But very often I get reminded about bits I forgot about.
Is that the best? It's like
it is.
Gold.
But it's so flattering that people know. I consider comedy to be kind of a calling. Mm-hmm. I was born. Some people are born to ride. Some people are born to sing. I was born to be funny.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough, and everybody should be lucky enough to find your talent, find the thing that you have, and to have that passion. And I've been so lucky to have been able to do exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, it wasn't always a direct line. Sometimes you got to go over here and then come back, and it wasn't always a direct line, linear line. It was stepping stones and no going off to here and stuff. But I've been very lucky, and I love making people laugh. And anybody that's ever done it, to be up on a stage with 300 eyes looking at you, and you got them by the mental balls, and they were hanging on every word that you're doing, and you're timing the laughs, and you're going now, boom, and there you go. It's like music. It's like music. There's nothing really like. I think Will Rogers said it the best. I think that a stand-up comedy is the hardest job in the world because your option is up after every joke.
Yeah, it's a great line. Now, I've got to ask you this because I wanted to spend some time with the acting. And there's a whole lot that you've done, like an uncredited role in Airplane, just so many like little things.
Yeah, little things.
Why the obsession of the industry to turn you into a coach on 3 different shows?
Oh, well, what that was the first one was intentional.
Yeah.
And then producers from Growing Pains and Just the 10 of Us, they went on to do other shows. Tim O'Donnell, who's one of the sweetest men in show business, he was one of the writers on my show. He went off to do Clueless.
Yep.
And then, so he created this character. He did one of the nicest things for me once. I was about $300 short of my health insurance for the year, and my wife had to have an operation on her heart. And Tim was the producer of Clueless at the time. And I called him up and said, Tim, is there anything? And I never call up people and go, hey, could you get me I said, Tim, is there anything I could do to this week so I could make $300 so I could throw it towards my health plan, my pension, and he said, yeah, let me so he called me back. Not only did he get, I thought maybe a voiceover or something or a walk-on but he created this character, another coach character, just like the one I played on Just the Talents, on this show. And I did about 4 or 5 of them, and my wife had her operation, would have cost me like $25,000-$30,000, and but they covered my health. And so that was one of the nicest things that anybody. Yeah. Tim O'Donnell was. And then what was the other one?
Well, Growing Pains and then just the 10 of us.
Well, yeah, without the
Spin-off,
same
yeah.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, was not a physical guy. I don't know anything about basketball. I didn't have a family. It was just me and my wife when I got married. So been married for maybe a year or two. I'm not Catholic. In fact, I'm not even religious. It was, they call you up. I literally got called up at home. My producers called my house. My wife answered. She's going, all four of the producers of Growing Pains are on the phone. They want to talk to you. And I thought, oh, fuck, what did I do? I thought, what I thought went through my head? This is stupid. I thought they were in editing. And maybe I was in a scene and I had my hand like this down by my side or something, just unconsciously.
You Jack Mason.
Yeah. I thought, well, why would they be calling me all at once? I must have done something terrible. And that's what went, the shit goes through your mind. So that's my picture. I go, hello? Like, okay, what did I do? And they said, hey, Bill, we're over here. Just got out of a meeting with ABC. And blah, blah. How would you like your own sitcom? And I thought, they literally, that's what the words were, literally. How would you like your own sitcom? And I said, oh, sure. And then they laid out what they were going to do, take this coach, and I have a bunch of kids. And it's not exactly what I would have maybe picked if I had input on it, but it was a great show. We won an Emmy. I didn't win an Emmy, but it won an Emmy. We did 47 shows. I think we were unjustly exited from the ABC schedule. I think history proved that that was a big mistake. But it is what it is. I had a great time. I got off the road. Even when I had my sitcom, I kept feeling, I've been on the road so long. Even when I had my sitcom and had, work next week and the next month, I still felt like I should be booking myself somewhere. And it was a great experience. I lived in North Hollywood, right on the edge of Toluca Lake. And the studio we shot at was at what they call the Warner Brothers Ranch, which is right down Camarillo. Hang a right, and it's right down there.
Yeah.
And the studio, the stage on that studio was the closest stage to my house of all of Los Angeles. I used to ride my bike down there, take my lunch, and I would take naps in the afternoon. It was like being back in second grade again. Except I had a show and made a lot of money. But
you also got to write a couple of episodes, didn't you?
Yes, my writing partner and I, we wrote a couple episodes. I think the next year they might have let me direct. Who knows? If I've been on for another year, I might have directed and I might have gone off into directing. I don't know. I would have an ear for that. I don't know. You never know. Things could have done things. We did 47 actually more like 52 with the transition shows. And it was great. It's my little mark in video history American television history. It'll sit there. And, my wife and I like to watch old movies from the 30s and stuff. And we'll see actors and actresses and go, oh, yeah, I remember her. Wow, look at that. And we look them up and see what their lives were like. Some of them good, some of them not so good.
Yeah.
And but there's nothing to like leaving that indelible mark on television and film that lives on forever. Who knows? Maybe there'll be people sitting in space houses watching just the 10 of us and going, oh, look at this back in the 80s. Oh God.
I think there will be.
Look, it's not a hologram. Oh, that boy is that antiquated. So I don't know.
Now, I want to talk about, going back to stand-up because you've always toured. You've always done sets. I know you've left Hollywood a few years ago, and you're living elsewhere now, but you still perform, and you still
I don't work at comedy clubs so much anymore. The budget's not there, and a lot of them, they're in towns where there's one comedy club. So if you put my grandmother up on stage, people would show up. I occasionally I work a comedy club, but it's usually maybe a big one. I do a lot of corporate shows. I do casinos, and I have a show I produce called The Ultimate Robin Williams Tribute Experience. And people go to robinexperience.com. They'll see that. And years ago, about 1996, I was in Vegas and I saw all these lookalike shows, with Michael Jackson and Madonna. And I looked and I said, if you can do that with singers, can you do that with comedians? So I started looking around. I had a friend of mine did great, Sam Kennison. And I thought, geez, so I went about looking and I found some people looked like and had no talent. And then I found several people, George Burns, Jack Benny, a Red Skelton, a Rodney Dangerfield, of people that could not only perform, but were funny and could pull off a really good impression, more than an impression, because they would do it from impression, you do it for 20 seconds. This thing that people had to come out and do, 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes. And so I built this thing called the Legends of Comedy at legendsofcomedy.com. And I started producing these shows. And as things went by, and I did that for about 15 years. And then a lot of the people in the show, like the Jack Benny, the George Burns was an actual old man. He died. Jack Benny was an older guy. He died. The Danger. So a lot of these people kind of died and passed away. And then a few years ago, when Robin died, I called a guy who had Roger Cabler, a friend of mine, who had done Robin for me and did a damn good Robin. And so we put together a show called the Ultimate Robin Experience, which is a tribute experience. And you'd swear to God you're watching Robin Williams. And I get a kick out of it, and I've gotten flack from it. Well, it's too soon. That he's been gone for about 6 years now. And it's really a tribute to him. And, it's like Elvis impersonations. People so love these people, so loved Elvis, so loved Robin, so loved that Michael Jackson. They don't want to let go. So they will settle for a pretty good, reasonable facsimile of that kind of entertainment. And so that's, except with Madonna and Michael Jackson, we have a Robin Williams show. And people come out of there crying and laughing at the same time. It's a great show.
Now, you also picked a great stand-up to inhabit Robin, because I started with Roger Cabler, and he's very
did
funny.
you?
Yeah.
Oh, he's hilarious. He's a great impression. He does other impressions, but this is more than an impression.
Yeah,
this is total immersion in his character, and he becomes Robin Williams down to his fingertips. I mean, I look at his hands and I go, he's holding his hands just like Robin. I mean, it's just amazing. So I go out and host that sometimes, but I produce that show, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. I also have my podcast. The Kirchenbauer Half an Hour, which is halfanhour.com, HAFFENHAUER, halfanhour.com. And I've been doing kind of like what we've been doing here, interviewing people, and just have a little platform for myself to yap and talk and tell the world what I think about shit. The older you get, the less of a shit you give.
And if people haven't seen it, because I've watched them, the Rich Scheidner episode is particularly fun. The two of you guys bouncing off and talking history and comedy. It literally.
He knows a lot. Rich knows a lot about comedy history.
Oh yeah, we spoke as well, and watching you two guys go at it, I felt like the little leaguer watching the major leaguers play. It's like, I know a little bit. These guys know. So it was fun watching that. I also want to talk about, so unfairly, there are some people that say that you're a little on the grumpy side because you're incredibly honest. And people have asked you over the years, about their act, and you are direct, and you tell them what you think.
Well, no, I preface it. I've had comedians come up to me, and not that my opinion is the end all, but I do consider myself kind of a self-taught comedy professor, if you will.
Okay.
It's like music, and sometimes I will have comedians say, "Gee, Mr. Kirchenbauer, will you watch my act and then tell me what you think?" And I go, "Okay, well, I'll watch your act, but if you really if you're asking me my opinion, then I'm going to give it to you. So, don't ask me if you don't want to hear it." And usually, people, I have tips. I see all the time. I could give people tips about, how to do this and how to do that, and mostly theatrical type direction. Yeah. People that don't know how to hold the microphone, find your light, little things like that. Don't say like all the time. Wait for the laughs. Things like that people, and I think it's impossible for people not to totally be objective. I think it's good to have it. Listen, if I did my show and Steve Martin came up and wanted to give me a tip or two, I go, let him fly, Yeah. So I'm not a guy that works at Kmart. I think I know what I'm talking about. So, but again, people have to find their own style. It's really the most important thing about doing stand-up comedy is find your own style, find yourself. Listen, I can only be Bill Kirchenbauer. I'm brutally honest. I got 2 curses in my life. I'm brutally honest, and maybe brutally isn't the word to put in there. I think I'm just honest. I hate pretending that things aren't the way they are, and I'm direct. I think my older age learned to couch things maybe a little better, but that's what comedy is. It's honesty. If you can't, but I can only be Bill Kirchenbauer, and that's what but 2 things in my curse is my honesty, and I notice shit. I notice everything. I'll notice stuff, and my wife will go, "What?" I go, "Didn't you see that guy with the thing?" And so I notice. I observe. I'm an observer. I watch people. I watch myself watching people, and people are interesting to watch. And sometimes bits pop out of it. That's how I write. I watch, and I stay awake, and I look, and and stuff just hits me.
I also want to talk about because of reason why I'm doing this podcast, to give back to the next generation of comics. What I've always found is I would not be where I am today. I wouldn't have a career if it weren't for really talented people like Dennis Wolfberg and Joe Bolster and Ronnie Shakes, literally seeing me in a comedy club and going, do less of this, do more of that. Here's some advice. Some of it I asked for because I'm a nervy son of a bitch, and some of it, they just offered because maybe they saw something in me that they thought was worth it. Who are some of the people when you started that were kind to you and kind of helped you along your journey?
Well, George Carlin, if you want to drop a name, I've got to say George Carlin. I first met George, and he was teaching a seminar, if you can believe this, at a place called the Sherman Oaks College or something in Hollywood. It was right there on Hollywood Boulevard. Sherwood Oaks Experimental College was what it was called. And there was this guy, and that's a whole nother story, would talk celebrities into coming in and doing seminars. You could go in and sit and listen to Richard Dreyfuss. And he had a comedy seminar, and it was with George Carlin. I saw, and I said, well, I'm going to bring I sold videotape equipment. So I brought a TV camera, and I recorded this seminar. And so that's when I first met George. And then I entered this thing they had called the First and Last. That wasn't the name, but that's what it was. The First International Los Angeles Comedy Competition. And it was a competition, and George was one at the finals, was one of the judges, along with Avery Shriver and somebody else. Anyway, I won. My picture was in the newspaper, and so I won. That was the #1 stand-up. And he was on there, and then I ended up doing my first Tonight Show with him. He requested that I come on, and so I did my first Tonight Show with George. I kept in contact with. I did another Tonight Show as a guest host with George, and I just kind of kept up with him. And he was just an inspiration. Not that he and I were anything alike, or anything, but he was just always kind, and just to watch him. I used to go in Vegas. I'd let him know I was in town. He'd leave tickets, and I watched him many times. And the man was a master. He was just a master. And then backstage, he was a sweet guy. He was humble. He was honest. George was the most honest son of a bitch in the world. And I used to watch stuff and I go, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. People used to get up and walk out at the valley sometimes. They wanted the hippy dippy weather, man. And he was talking about locking up prisoners in mass executions. and so, but I would have to say George was an inspiration because he was so prolific, and he was more than a comedian. He was a philosopher, and I really hold him in great esteem. He was always kind to me. Fred Willard was always been a nice guy. I worked with him on Fernwood, and he was always very sweet and open and giving. And
the best straight man I've ever seen.
Oh yes, Fred was absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
And selflessly would set other performers up for the
Oh yeah. Well, that's what a good improv guy does. You don't take. Good improv, you listen and you give. And again, it's your ego. It's one thing I learned from Howard Storm is put your ego in your back pocket. He told me something very interesting one time. He said, if you're up on stage and there's a bunch of other people on stage doing improv, let's say 5 other people, and you're all and everybody's the instinct that everybody for themselves, and it's a big mishmash of people trying to be funny and on topping each other. And there's this big thing on stage. He said, "Don't participate." He said, "Go to the back of the stage and pull up a chair and sit down across your legs and stare." He said, "Everybody will look at you." And that's kind of my philosophy. Just put your ego in your back pocket. Great comedians like Gleason, they were giving, they weren't taking. They said, let Art Carney shine, because you know what? It's still the Jackie Gleason show. And so you're confident. Same thing with Carson. He let people. That was the one great thing about Johnny Carson. He let people shine. He didn't mind if they were funny, because it was still the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And so and that's what people were. How did you see Johnny last night? Oh, he's so funny. No, George Burns was funny. But, so I think keeping your ego in your back pocket is really, really important. My wife helps me do that.
How long are you married?
33 years.
And okay, so 33 years, one wife. I'm on my third in about the same time frame. What's the secret?
Toleration and friendship. My wife and I are best friends. I don't hang out with guys. Like I said, I don't watch football. I don't go watch NASCAR or I like boxing. But I hang out with my wife. She's my best friend. We laugh at the same shit. She makes me laugh. I make her laugh. That's really, you got to be friends.
Yeah, you absolutely do.
People always say to me, they say, "What are you, a tits man or an ass man?" Or I go, all women got tits and ass and stuff. I said, it's the face. It's the face you got to fall in love with, because you're not going to see their tits and ass all the time. You're going to have to look at their face. So that's what you got to fall in love with. And if you can't do that, then don't bother.
Now, you have been incredibly generous today, and I've kept you over time, and I do want to be conscious of it.
I charge for that. No.
Oh man, I can't afford you.
No. It's been fun. I appreciate it, Jim.
I wanted to just find out from you if there's anything you wish you would have known when you started stand-up that you learned during the adventure. For me, I wish I would have known when I started to enjoy the learning process more. I wish I would have been more patient with it and not in such a hurry to get good. Was there something along the journey you wish you would have known earlier?
I think I would have maybe schmoozed more. I was not a big ass kisser. I never would go up to Bud or Mitzi, go, "Oh, Bud, oh, Mitzi, oh, thank you." I used to have agents want me to send cards to casting people for an audition. And I go, "No." So I wasn't a big schmoozer. I wasn't a hang-arounder. I mean, I had all the friends. I knew it, and I wasn't certainly aloof, but I wasn't I didn't hang out at the Improv until they closed and then go off to, so maybe I might have schmoozed a little bit more. People have to remember that this is also a business. And I had a very wise friend of mine, Mark Evanier, who's a comic book writer and comedian. He was a big writer. And he said something to me once, and I always remember. He said, "The only way you get ahead in show business is by saying no."
It is incredibly powerful.
It is.
I got to admit, I could talk to you for hours. I
Oh,
hope that you'll consider coming back on, and let's have part 2 of this eventually.
Well, possibly. I'm trying to get to Thailand. That's where I'm going to retire.
Well, hopefully you don't retire too soon.
No, but you know what?
Still have a lot of comedy to give.
We live in the future, Jim. We live in the future.
Yeah.
Here we are. We can talk. I could just as well be in Thailand right now. Same effect.
I'll be honest. I recorded Franklin and Jai from Australia. You'd be a little bit closer.
I went down the first time Franklin went to Australia. I went down there with him with Steve Bluestein to entertain in Sydney, and he fell in love with the place.
Yeah.
And I thought it was nice, but in fact, I proposed to my wife there in Sydney.
Oh.
Yeah, he loves it down there. Rich Hall doing great over in England.
Yeah.
And I've traveled the world. I've spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia and Asia, and they have comedy over there, and it's a whole new thing. It's like 1971 over there. They're just kind of discovering it. It's all done in English. There's English-speaking comedy clubs in Vietnam. There's English-speaking comedy clubs in Shanghai and Beijing, I think there's one. And so, and stand-up comedy. Hi, how you doing? How about them chopsticks, or whatever. But a lot of them are British people, and some of them are English-speaking Asians. So it's really developing, and I've watched how it reminds me of the Comedy Store back in the 70s. So it's evolving. So,
well, I know wherever you go, you're going to be a force to be dealt with wherever you are in the stand-up world. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being our guest, and we're definitely going to do this again if I have my way about this.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Bill.
You're welcome, Jim. Take care, man.
You too. Bye. Okay. So I will admit it. I was a little bit starstruck on that one. It's so fun when you get to talk to the people that you admired all these years, that you watched and you grew up in, and you formed your comedy opinions, studying. And to hear him talk about comedy, to hear how much he loves it, it's exciting. And if he does indeed go to Thailand and start the last part of his life, I am sure he is going to be on the stages in Thailand and the top comic in Thailand in no time. We are so grateful to be able to tap into somebody like Bill Kirchenbauer as a resource. We're going to be back again next week. We're going to have another great guest. On behalf of everybody who's part of the Comedy Legacy series, from our technical crew to the people over at New Media Comedy, to our guest, Mr. Bill Kirchenbauer, we want to thank you for tuning in. Please listen, tell your friends, watch us on YouTube every Monday. And even more importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Download us on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. And leave a review and let us know what you want to see. We would be happy to hear from you. And drop us a line at comedylegacy@nmcworldwide.com. Until next time, I'm Jim Mendrinos. Keep making them laugh, guys.
This has been a New Media Comedy Worldwide production.